Hi, what's going on, guys? It's right here. Yeah, so I've started the new tutorial series about building with Laravel, and yeah, I just want uh, to get people from scratch with a sample application that is a blog, and just so that you can know the flow of the workflow of Laravel, how it flows, the development process, so that if you're a beginner, it will be easy for you to build applications using Laravel. Yeah, I saw on Django they have a similar uh, tutorial on the in the documentation, but I didn't see one for Laravel, so I decided to create one because it's really helpful when you're starting out, so that you can know how to navigate Laravel and the proper way to do things from the start, so that you don't learn bad habits that could hurt you. Anyway, so this is I'm going to do to be doing this for several lessons. So this is just the first one, and I've done a couple already. So I want us to be able to build an application so that you can have a dashboard like this. Like this is my website, my own website, and like when I want to write blog posts like this is actually built using Laravel. I just Laravel for the backend, and for the front end I used Alpine JS and Tailwind CSS. So cool stuff. You can visit dryometer.com to see what I've built. And yeah, so it will be several lessons, and you're welcome to join in. So in this tutorial, we are just going to build a blog using Laravel from scratch, and so that we can learn by example. And we are going to be using Laravel 8 because it is the current version as per the recording of this tutorial. And throughout this tutorial, we'll learn how to create a blog. And our blog will consist of two parts. That is the public site. That's like this part, this public site, and then an admin site, like this one, where you post you manage your blog posts. And so the Laravel.com documentation contains the documentation for everything, but the only problem is when you're starting out, it's kind of hard to piece all this information together so that you can come up with something sensible quickly enough. So that's why I created this tutorial. So as you can see, when you want to install Laravel, so there's a couple of things you can do, from installation to whatever. It's just a lot. And yeah, so I just want us to walk through basic stuff until you can create a good blog that you can deploy, and then from there on you'll learn more how to use Laravel. Cool. So our first step is to try creating a Laravel project, and to create a Laravel project you actually need Composer. So Composer is the package manager for PHP. So if you haven't installed Composer on your machine, you need to head over to getcomposer.org and download Composer, right? So if you don't like to follow this lesson, you can also just follow it from my blog, but it would be cool if you just follow along so that we can do it practically together, right? So get Composer. So if you're on Windows, you can download Composer here using Composer setup.exe. If you're on Linux and you would like to install using a command line, you just open your command line and then you do this. If you already have PHP installed in a computer, right? So if you don't have PHP installed, um, if you're on Windows, you can use XAMPP. I like to use XAMPP because Windows is just something else when it comes to development. So I don't like to fight with it. I just install XAMPP. And for best experience, you can download the latest one, that is PHP with PHP version 7.4. That way it means you'll have when Laravel gets upgraded, you won't suffer the consequences, because you see now the latest version, the least version supported by Laravel 8 is 7.3. So yeah, cool. Yeah. So if you're on Windows, you can download this here. If you're on Linux, you can if you're on Linux, you can download also, and also on Mac. But if you're on Linux, I prefer to do it using yeah. So there is this. Yeah. So this tutorial is good. And if you're not using this version of Ubuntu, you can go up to 20, Ubuntu 20, and you just follow this, and you just you need to just, some of these things you'll need to do them once, and then after that you'll keep just changing the configuration file and it'll be cool. But if you just want to start quickly to test something, you can do XAMPP, because XAMPP will install for us. We'll install the PHP, we'll install an Apache server, and MySQL database, and many other things that you need. So once you download XAMPP from Apache Friends, and then we can now go ahead to create a Laravel project. That is, if you have XAMPP and Composer. So the most important thing as we are starting is Composer. I was just suggesting you install XAMPP because later on we are going to work with the database, and you need to have that set up. Cool. So once you have that set up, you can now proceed to your command line and do this and install your application. So if you have XAMPP on your computer, the best place to install, because XAMPP most probably install in C and then XAMPP. So the best place to install your project is inside C XAMPP, then htdocs. Inside htdocs, so this is going to act like your web root. But if you're on Linux, you can go to var www then html. That's where you put your project. Cool. Right, so after you do that, you open your terminal inside that directory, inside your web root. If you're on Linux, you should be here, var www html. If you're on Windows, you can go to cd c XAMPP htdocs. Right, so that's a project root, and now you can run your command there. Composer create project, preferred dist, Laravel, and then blog. If you're on Linux, again, you can still do the same in your project root. Right, so it's important to put it in the project root so that when you're doing configuration, everything is easier. But you can put it wherever you want, as long as you have your server configured properly, right? But for now, we don't even need the server. We only need, we only need to put our project on our computer, right? So it's going to take a little bit of time to install after you do that. So while you wait, you can go over the directory structure, right? So for me, I already installed the project so that I can do this quickly. So let me just open up the project. So I'm using PHP Storm. You can always do whatever you want. So you can pause the video to wait for the project to install. I'll be waiting. So once your project has installed, you can open it, and so that you can go through the directory structure of the project, right? So we have a couple of directories here, and the first one, as you can see, is the app directory. So it contains a bunch of other directories. So the console directory, of course, will contain console commands that you can run in your command line, and then the exceptions. This one contains the handler. This is for handling errors. HTTP contains controllers. So these are where controllers, we shall see more about controllers, but they're basically classes, a bunch of classes that respond to system requests. Yeah, and then so whenever a request is sent to your website, they are processed by controllers, and then the middleware. So these are used for just uh, you intercept requests, and then you do whatever you want. If it's validation or whatever, you do that. If it's redirecting someone, you do that through middleware, and then the kernel. Also, this is where you register your middleware, right? Cool. So after that, then you have the models. Models is for storing models. So models are classes that are used to interact with the database. So if you don't know that yet, and then we have providers. Providers are just classes that are used to load service classes. So um, a service class is just a class that is used to provide specific functionality for the app, but it's not tied to any functionality of the application, right? So if you want to write a service class, for example, to 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 do what do we call this, recapture, to add Google recapture to your website, you can do it via app service providers and whatever. So yeah, so you over the course of your building, you'll learn more about that, but for now you don't even need those service providers, but they're very important. And then Bootstrap contains this app.php. It's used to put together our application and build it so that it can be loaded into the computer. And then the cache is to store temporary files that are generated by the application. These are cache files so that to improve application performance, right? Cool. And then we have the config, as the name suggests, is used for storing configuration files. So if you open it, you see a bunch of, including database, a bunch of configuration files for the application. So if you want to write configuration files for anything, you put them in the config. And then we have the database. So the database, it contains a bunch of files. We have the factories and migrations and seeders. We shall see more about those. Yeah, so if you want to like store to create tables, you use migrations to update and to manage tables, and then to feed data into the databases, you use seeders, and factories are used to generate dummy data for inserting into the database for the purposes of testing, right? Cool. So and then we have the public directory. This stores as you can see, there's a htaccess here. It's used to reroute the application, right? But the public folder is the main entry point for your application. So if you all requests should be routed to this public folder and to this file, the index.php. It acts as the entry point for requests entering our application, and it also configures auto loading. So yeah, so this is the autoloader that is used to load classes and everything else that is produced by Composer, right? And then it also houses CSS, the ones that the CSS, JavaScript, and image files that are used by your website. Yeah, so if you have like backgrounds or whatever, you can put them in the public directory here. Yeah, these are files that are your website uses permanently. I will see more about that, and anything else that is available to the outside world. That's what you put here, and then the resources directory. This one contains it houses your application's view files. So if you open it, we see the view files here, and these CSS and JavaScript are that ones that are not compiled yet, and compiled assets. So after you compile them, you normally would put them in the directory. So it is done mostly automatically using some compiler, JavaScript compiler or whatever, and then you put the ready files in the public directory. And then it also contains language files. So if you want to translate your website, you use this lang directory, and you put your, like for example, right now it's using English. So if you have Espanol and whatever, you put them here. Then we have the views. So these are the files for your website is going to display. So this is what displays to the users, these views, right? So yeah. And then we have routes. Routes are used to they house your application's route definitions. There are a number of files in here, as you can see. We have the API. So the most important, of course, is the web.php. This is where you define your views from the start, the ones that are available on the front end. So if you're going to have your website together with this application, so you define the routes here in the view file. So these routes have access to the session state. They also have CRF protection, CSRF protection, and they have cookie encryption. And then you have the API. API, it contains rules that are intended to be stateless. For example, if you are building a mobile application and you need some routes to access your application, so you write them in the API thing. Then you have the console. So inside console, you just write, they are called, you just write a bunch of closure methods here, and then you write another method here. Whatever you write in here is going to be performed by the console commands. So that is, if you want to write those commands, you write them in the console directory, console file, sorry. And then you have the channels. Channels is used to define your event broadcasting channels. So if you would like to send notifications, for example, if a payment has been made on a user's account and you want to push to broadcast a real-time notification to applications that have subscribed to your app, you can do it through the channels file, right? So no need to worry much about that. So for starters, you use web.php a lot, but then after you learn more about these things, you can use the rest as you please, right? Cool. So the next thing is the storage. This is it houses compiled blade templates and also file-based sessions. So if you're storing sessions in files, they are housed in here, and then file caches, and we have other generated files by the framework. And it contains these directories. The app directory, this one, it's used to house any files generated by your application. The framework, the public directory, app public directory, is used to store any publicly available user-generated files. For example, it could be PDF files for something, or their user avatars, the profile pictures. They'll be stored in the public directory inside storage and app, right? And then there is the storage, and then there is framework. Framework is used to store framework generated files, like you can see, cache, sessions, testing, whatever, views. These are compiled views, right? So cool, just to make sure your application operates optimally. And then log files, these are, like, for example, error files and other types of logs. You store them here inside the logs directory. Cool. Right, so, and then we have tests. So this contains your application's automated tests. So you write your tests in here, and they are when you run, they are automated tests. So yeah, so it's used to store automated tests, right? And then we have the vendor directory. See, this houses all third-party Composer packages. So Composer dependencies are stored in the vendor thing. So if your application, for example, when you push it to production, or not really production, when you put it to like GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab, you realize that the vendor directory is not shipped. So it's only created when you run Composer install. So when you don't find it online, you don't fret, because as you can see in this, it's actually ignored, vendor directories with Node, and also Node modules if you ever use npm. Yeah, so cool. So after that, then now we need to try our application after it has installed. So after our application has been installed, we need to try it and see if it's working. So the way you do that is PHP artisan. So good. So this has started a development server at this address. So if we click on this, we can see our Laravel application welcome page. This is for the Laravel 8. Cool. So our application, it's built 8.0.4, and that's awesome. So that is what we are going to do for this first lesson. Just to try out things, to see how we can do things differently here before we go to the next session, to the next lesson. Let's try to change the view. For example, we want to change the view so that we can see the difference. For example, you want to display something different here. The way you do that is you go to your views, resources, and then views, and you create a new view. For example, I've created a view called index.blade.php. So you can create that, index.blade.php, and then after you create that, you can add something, maybe a h1 or something, and then you say howdy, this is the home page, or whatever you want to put there. So you can create a new file, insert views, and then you come to the routes and you open web.php, and then you change welcome to index. Right, so you make sure you define the route first, the view first, before you come in reference here. So we return this closure with the definition of with the view instance, and that view instance is what is going to be displayed in our browser. So if we come back to our application and refresh it, you can see how our home page is. So now instead of returning the welcome blade, it's returning the index blade. Cool, very nice. So it's just that simple, and you have already started building an application with Laravel. And so next up, we are going to learn how to use the database so that we can store some data in the database and see how to interact with the database. Otherwise, thank you so much for following through. See you in the next lesson. And in case you haven't subscribed, please do so, and like the video if it really helped you, so that others can find it, so that they can find help. Otherwise, thank you so much. See you in the next video.